Welcome to the Quotive Corner. Today's quote is compact. One sentence, two ideas. But it asks you to rethink two of the most fundamental emotional categories in human experience. And it does it in a way that's easy to nod at and hard to actually internalize. The opposite of love is indifference, and the opposite of happiness is boredom. That's Tim Ferriss from the 4-Hour Workweek, published in 2007. Ferriss is an American entrepreneur, author, and investor best known for that book, which became a phenomenon not because it was a standard productivity manual, but because it challenged the entire framework most people use to think about work, time, and what a well-lived life actually looks like. What makes it interesting is that it doesn't just make one observation. It makes two simultaneously, and both deserve their own examination. Let's take them one at a time. The opposite of love is indifference. This one lands differently than the version most people were handed growing up. The conventional pairing, love and hate, feels intuitively right. They're both intense. They're both consuming. They're both forms of deep engagement with another person. But hate, when you think about it carefully, still requires investment. You have to care enough about someone to sustain active hostility toward them. Hate has energy. It has direction. It pays attention. Indifference has none of that. Indifference is the complete withdrawal of attention and care, the state in which another person has ceased to register as significant. You don't think about them. You don't feel anything when their name comes up. You have no interest in how they're doing, no reaction to their successes or failures, no opinion about their presence or absence in your life. And that, Ferriss is arguing, is the actual opposite of love, not hostility, absence. Think about how this maps onto real relationships. The marriage that ends with one partner screaming and the other in tears is painful. But both people are still present to each other. They still matter enough to generate that intensity. The marriage that ends with one partner simply not caring anymore, where the other person has become background, a roommate, a logistical arrangement, that is something colder and more final. The love didn't turn into hate. It turned into nothing. And nothing is harder to come back from than anger, because anger at least keeps the relationship alive in some form. Elie Wiesel said something in this same territory, that the opposite of love is not hate but indifference, and the opposite of life is not death but indifference. He arrived at that observation from a very different place than Ferriss did. But the insight is the same. Indifference is a true negation, because it removes even the possibility of engagement. You can work with anger. You cannot work with the absence of feeling. Now the second half of the quote. The opposite of happiness is boredom. This one is subtler and in some ways more radical. The conventional opposite of happiness is sadness, or suffering, or grief, but Ferriss pushes back on that. Sadness and grief, like hate, are forms of engagement. They hurt, which means something still matters. You cannot grieve something you didn't care about. You cannot feel deeply sad about something that was indifferent to you. Sadness is the proof that something was worth caring about. And in that sense, it is not the opposite of happiness, but a shadow, the other side of the same investment. Boredom is different. Boredom is the state in which nothing registers as meaningful, engaging, or worth your full attention. It is the experiential equivalent of indifference, not suffering, but the absence of aliveness. Nothing interests you enough to pull you fully in. Nothing generates the energy of genuine engagement. You are present, but not inhabited. Ferriss makes this explicit elsewhere in the same book, and I quote, "Excitement is the more practical synonym for happiness." And, remember, boredom is the enemy, not some abstract failure. Taken together, his argument is that the quality of a life is measured not by the absence of pain, but by the presence of genuine engagement. The person who is suffering is, in a real sense, more alive than the person who is merely bored, because suffering at least confirms that something still matters enough to generate a response. That reframe has practical implications. Most people, when they're unhappy, try to move toward comfort, to eliminate the sources of discomfort and arrive at a state of ease. Ferriss's framework suggests that ease is not the destination. Engagement is. The life worth living is not the pain-free life, but the fully inhabited one. The one where things genuinely matter, where you're pulled forward by interest and investment rather than going through the motions of a routine that generates neither joy nor pain, just a slow passage of time. In a prior episode, Sam Levinson told us to do what the clock does. Keep going, keep moving forward. In another episode, Sydney Harris told us the time to relax is when you don't have time for it. Ferriss is pointing at the emotional version of the same principle. The antidote to boredom isn't rest, it's engagement. It's finding the thing that generates enough genuine interest that the question of whether you're happy or not stops being the primary question, because you're too absorbed in the thing itself to be asking it. And on the love side, Freud noticed that boldness arrives with the certainty of being loved, that genuine security produces the willingness to act without guarantees. Indifference produces the opposite, a kind of emotional freefall where nothing is being risked because nothing is genuinely at stake. The bold life and the loving life are related. Both require full presence. Both are undone not by hostility, but by the slow withdrawal of investment. Now, let's consider the honest counterpoint, because I never skip it. Ferriss's framework is most useful as a diagnostic for what's actually missing when something feels wrong. But it can be taken too far. Not every moment of quiet is boredom. Not every absence of intensity is indifference. Rest is real and necessary. Contentment, the quiet satisfaction of a life in good order, is a genuine form of happiness, not its negation. And the framing of excitement as a synonym for happiness risks creating a standard that treats calm, sustainable well-being as somehow lesser than the high engagement version. Some of the most deeply happy people live quiet lives. Some of the most loving relationships are marked by ease rather than intensity. What Ferriss is really targeting is not the genuine contentment of a well-lived life, but the numbness that can settle in when we stop paying attention. When routine replaces intention, when relationships are maintained rather than inhabited, when days pass without anything genuinely mattering. That numbness is the real enemy, and naming its two faces, indifference and boredom, is a precise way to recognize it when it shows up. Check the temperature of what you feel. If the answer is nothing, if the honest response to your relationships and your days is a kind of flat nothing, that's the signal Ferriss is pointing at. Not the presence of pain, but the absence of aliveness. That's the thing worth addressing. Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. If this one made you look more honestly at where your attention and investment have actually been going, that's exactly the point. As always, consider that wisdom isn't in the quote. It's in the reflection. See you soon in the next episode.